Hello, my fierce friends. If you are a woman entrepreneur, you are running a business, and you feel that you are competing in an oversaturated market, you're worried that maybe there's so much competition out there that there might not be room for you and your business, then you need to watch this video, because over the course of the next 15 minutes or so, I am going to share 12 tips to help you compete even if you are in a saturated market where there is a ton of competition. My name is Eleanor Beaton. I am the host of Fierce Feminine Leadership, the success podcast for ambitious women in business. This podcast has been ranked in the top 100 podcasts on iTunes in the education category. We have well over 1 million downloads and serve women entrepreneurs from across the world. I have served as the former chair of the Visiting Women's Executive Exchange Program at the Yale School of Management, have been named Canada's Leadership Coach of the Year, and my passion is really helping women entrepreneurs scale and succeed to 7 figures and beyond. In fact, the mission of our company is to double the number of women entrepreneurs who scale past 7 figures by the year 2030. All right. So we firmly believe that really unlocking the power of women entrepreneurs is absolutely key when it comes to really advancing gender equity globally. So that's all of the sort of materials and training materials and coaching work that we do with women entrepreneurs around the world is really intended to serve this mission. And we asked some of our the people inside our community recently, what are the biggest questions that you have when it comes to really growing and scaling and succeeding to 7 figures and beyond? And multiple people came back to us with a question of how to cope with saturation. Many of these business owners have started, in most cases, service-based or tech-based businesses. They are actively, in this arena, and they are starting to see more and more what they call saturation. So there's lots of competition, and their question was, how do I deal with this? And I totally get it. I can completely relate to that feeling. I remember, when I started my business, it was because of a passion. And in fact, according to a 2018 survey from PayPal, 47% of all women entrepreneurs do so. They cite passion as a main reason. So we have a particular area that we are very passionate about, and we are driven to create a business that is born out of that passion. Beautiful thing. And for me, that passion was really advancing women into positions of influence and leadership. And really the focus there, of course, is supporting women entrepreneurs to do that. And I could easily have taken a look around, and I did, and saw, just a chorus of voices around the world who had a very similar mission to my mission and really wanted to support women entrepreneurs to scale and succeed as well. So I could totally have, I remember especially in the early days, looking around and thinking to myself, does the world really need another person who's doing exactly, what I'm doing? I obviously decided that the answer was yes, but I know that feeling of looking around, seeing a crowded marketplace, the self-doubt creeps in. You are asking yourself, is there room for me? Does the world really need another, business in this space? How am I different? These kinds of questions. And so the purpose of this video today is to really tackle that head on. And we're going to be looking at saturation and how to compete in a saturated market, both from a mindset perspective, but also from a very practical perspective. So that's where we really pulled out the stops and came together to create really a tip list, a 12 tip list for you to help you compete better and compete more. But in the meantime, I highly encourage you to come on out, introduce yourself in the comments. And if you've got questions that you would like for us to cover in our show, the 2% Scaling Strategies for Women Entrepreneurs, please go ahead and first introduce yourself in the comments, but also let us know the questions that you have that you would like for us to cover on this show. All right. So if you are entering a market where you have a lot of competitors, or if you are already competing in a market where there are a lot of competitors, here are some tips to help you stand out. So tip number 1, watch what you make saturated mean. Okay. So interesting when I was, taking a look at some of the questions that people inside members of our community were asking, the implication was that saturation was a bad thing. And what they meant by saturation is that there were already lots of players in the market. And so the first question, this is a really mindset kind of question, is why is that a bad thing? And why would you assume that that's a bad thing, right? So it's a question we all have to ask ourselves. Competition is a very good thing. And another way to frame saturation is in terms of a thriving ecosystem. So typically when we see lots of competition, what we're also seeing is potentially very strong demand. The other thing, of course, is that, so for instance, if you look at my industry, the coaching industry, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, people really saw coaching as something that happened for athletes, So some of the earlier business coaches and leadership coaches and life coaches, the question, there was the assumption that they were working with athletes. Well, that industry has grown, which is a great thing for everybody. That the coaching industry has grown, but so has the demand. Okay. And so again, I think sometimes the harmful assumption that you might be making is the fact that there are a lot of competitors, or the number of competitors or entrants in an industry. What you may be missing is that the market for that service or the market for that offering is also growing. And sometimes the demand is outpacing the supply. Okay, so really watch what you make saturated mean, and understand that competition is very often a very good thing, and it shows a very healthy and strong marketplace. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is that's related to tip number one, is to pay attention to how you make your thoughts on saturated impact your marketing. And here's an example. I can remember working with a woman entrepreneur who was, she was entering into a space where there were players. In fact, in her network, she knew two other people who were offering a service that was very similar to hers. It was a consulting-based business, and that they were offering services that would be, deemed in the same category. And so again, she felt that she was dealing with being in a saturated market. And so the challenge is that she spent a lot of time sort of looking side to side at what her competitors were doing, or what her colleagues in her same industry were doing, taking a look at their marketing initiatives, taking a look at where they were speaking, taking a look at what they were doing with their social media feeds, and beginning to feel very discouraged. What new thing could I add to this conversation? Why would someone listen to me? And that self-doubt was actually preventing her from getting out there. So that's tip number two, okay? To really to practice a high degree of self-awareness about what you make your thoughts about operating in a saturated market mean, and how that impacts how you get out there and market. One of the things that I will see very often is that when people think that they feel that they're in a saturated market, one of the questions that they ask themselves is, why bother? How can I possibly stand out? I can't, so I won't even bother. So really want to make sure you're paying attention there. Tip number three, market to your customers. Don't market to your colleagues. Market to your customers. Don't market to your colleagues. So again, something that can happen is that when you perceive yourself to be operating in a saturated market, you are paying a lot of attention to what others are doing, and you are allowing that to guide how you are showing up much more than what your customers need and want. I'll give you an example. I was running a messaging lab recently. So this is where we work with women entrepreneurs to help them really nail a powerful and game-changing message to help them stand out in the marketplace. And one of the people that we were working with was really continuously referencing the work that other competitors were doing. And one of the conversations and sort of the game-changing moment for her was when we switched that focus from taking a look at what her competitors and colleagues were doing to really instead being very focused on her clients needed, how she could really add tremendous value to potential customers and clients, and really build her marketing approach around her customers, not around her colleagues. Again, I can remember this iconic moment in, I was a kid, I was watching a 100-meter sprint. I don't remember who was on. It was the men's Olympics 100-meter final. I was a child, and the person who he lost because he took a moment to look side to side, rather than being focused on finishing his race. And so again, when it comes to competing in a saturated market, you really want to make sure that, yes, you're aware of what's going on in your marketplace, but you're not expending undue energy taking a look at your competitors and allow that to take you away from the needs of your customers and potential customers and the people who can really benefit from what you're doing. Okay. So that's tip number 3, market to your customers, not your colleagues. Tip number 4 is to really know your numbers. So, one of the things, again, sometimes in business, we can, if we're not actively managing our minds as leaders, we can buy into our own BS and we can buy into our own stories. So let me give you a classic example. So sometimes the fear of, starting a business inside a saturated market is that there's not going to be enough for us. That the market, that there's just not a lot of business out there. And if I move into a saturated market, there's just not going to be enough business for me. How could I possibly compete? Well, let me give you an example. One of the clients one of the people who is very focused on, how do I compete inside a saturated market? Her ultimate goal for her business over the course of the next, she's really sort of in a startup phase, the course in a startup consulting business, her revenue goal is to do $500,000 a year. Okay. And so for her, this is about, she wants to keep her business with, relatively small, maybe a team of 3, very high profit margins. And she knows that she wants to do about 500,000. For her, the average deal size that she engages in is 25,000. And so she needs 20 deals in a year. 20 deals in a year that she could easily fulfill with a team of about 3 other people inside the business. She could keep a very healthy profit margin. It would be great. She only needs 20 deals. And so when you think about a saturated market, sometimes we tell ourselves the story that there's not enough business for us, when really, when you know your numbers and you're very clear, what are my revenue targets? How many deals do I need to make this revenue target? How many customers are we actually talking about? I don't need tens of thousands of customers. I need 20. And when you really start running the numbers and doing the math, it helps you be very clear about the game that you are playing and what you need to do to produce the results that you want to produce. Okay. Again, one of the reasons that we as women entrepreneurs are getting into business is because of our desire for freedom. In fact, in that PayPal study, over half of the women entrepreneurs cited the desire for freedom, for work-life balance as a major factor in the decision to start their business. And so what I'm suggesting to you is, if you have concerns about being in a saturated market, again, be sure that you're clear about what you want your business to produce, what you think your average deal size is, how many customers you actually need. And, that can very often reframe. We're talking about 20 deals here for this person. Her warm network alone was producing 10 deals. She really needed to market only to get in front of about 20 additional people, because she typically had a 50% close rate on her proposals. Okay. So know your numbers. That's tip number 3. That was tip number 4. Tip number 5, know what's missing. Really take a look at, survey the market, figure out what's missing, and make sure that you are adding that to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Okay, so an example might be, let's say that you are an HR consultant, and so you provide HR consulting services to your clients. Perhaps one of the core things that's missing, in the marketplace is culture strategy. So maybe when you take a look at a lot of at what's going on in the industry and sort of the standard norms, there's a lot of policies, procedures, hiring practices, that kind of thing that exists inside HR consulting. But a gap, is not just that side of HR, but actually the culture. And so you decide that a culture audit is going to be a part of what you provide with all of the work, all of the HR consulting that you do. So that's just an example, but really survey the market scientifically, dispassionately, take a look at what's out there and really take a look for the aspects that are missing, and find out how you can weave that into your offering to really stand out and create a difference. Tip number 6 is to build excitement. Build excitement. So how can you, when it comes to competing, so one of the best ways to compete, one of the most cost-effective ways to acquire customers is through referrals. And a great way to generate referrals is to really surprise and delight your customers and clients. How can you find ways to do that? Really to build excitement around your offering, and to find really cool ways to do that so that you can ultimately, stand out that way. A great thing to think about is that, when you think about marketing your business, one of the things that we do in marketing is to really show the promise of our offering, our product or service, to really show the promise. Now, when it comes to delivery, you have to meet that promise, right? You haven't done anything. So your marketing, you're showing here's what's possible when you consume this offering. And so in order to meet the expectation, you have to meet the expectation. If you're saying, look, this is what you're going to create, what's possible for you by consuming this offering is amazing, then you have to be amazing in your delivery just to meet the expectation. So the question then is, how do I surprise, delight, and excite people over top of that, to really stand out in the marketplace? And typically a great way to do that is through the element of surprise. How can you find ways to surprise, to deliver the unexpected? Again, this is a great strategy to help you stand out in a saturated market, which helps you in turn generate referrals from your clients, and customers, which again, further helps you stand out. Okay. Number 7, don't be afraid to inject your distinct and unique personality. All right. So, and so for some of you, if you have a personal brand, it's about and your business is built around a personal brand. It's about really being you. I can remember talking to a pioneer in a particular industry. And one of the big things that all pioneers have to deal with is getting copied. And she was saying, Eleanor, one of the things that I've learned is that that getting copied is natural in a saturated market. Getting copied is natural. And for me, it's about being more me, injecting more of my personality into my brand. So that's tip number 7. Tip number 8. You can decide what you will, inside the area in which you are playing, decide what you will own and stand for, and then niche down inside of that. So for instance, if you are a leadership coach, perhaps you focus on leadership in the manufacturing industry, as an example. Okay, so you can take a look. If you're in a saturated industry, take a look at where are there opportunities, where do I have specific expertise, are there pieces of this that I can absolutely own. All right. Number 9, another great way for you to stand out in a saturated industry, this is about sort of the selling process, is to reduce the risk. Okay, reduce the risk of doing business with you. So let's say you are operating in an industry where your potential customers and clients have a lot of different choices. So they've got a wealth of choices to choose from. So particularly if you're selling services, when we sell services, the risk of doing business with us is placed strictly on our customers' shoulders. So it's not like going to the Tesla dealership. You can take the Tesla for a test drive, you can sit in it, you can feel it, you can see how it performs. With services, you can't test drive services like that. And so a great way, particularly for those of you who are building service-based businesses, to stand out is to find ways to really reduce the risk inside the buying process. So an example of that, for instance, in our messaging lab service, where it's a program where we work directly with women entrepreneurs to help them nail their message. It's a micro program, right? It's a micro coaching course. So it happens over a period of 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, they have their game-changing message. And after that first call where we identify the message, they have up to the end of that first call to get their message, work directly with me, and if they're not blown away, they get their money back. It is a no risk. We take on the risk, and that is a great way, again, to stand out inside a competitive marketplace. Number 10, build trust by sharing enormous value. Build trust in your marketplace by creating and delivering enormous value. And again, this is part of, in a saturated marketplace where there are a lot of competitors, how do you stand out? And people worry about this, but the truth is it's not that hard to stand out. Just really deliver enormous value and be very passionate about that. Take your time, be diligent and disciplined about doing it. Let's say you are creating a really powerful blog post, an educational blog post. So you create your educational blog post. Are you putting sort of a tidied up first draft out there? Or are you sort of setting it aside and then coming back later and really thinking to yourself, what are some other things that I could add to this that would just take that value over the top? Right? So add tremendous amounts of value and build trust. Number 11, own your credibility. Okay, this one is huge for you women entrepreneurs out there. I see it all the time that you're burying, in journalism, we used to say burying the lead. So what will happen is you will find that you may be swallowing or hiding some of your biggest accomplishments, the awards, the prestige, the accomplishments. In today's world, there are a lot of people out there who will try to make you obsessed with being relatable to your audience. And in doing that, what happens is people unwittingly bury the things that really establish their creativity. Or their credibility, rather, the Oxford degree, the best-selling status, the awards, that kind of thing. So really make sure that you are owning your credibility and putting it out there. And then finally, and I didn't make this up, and I can't remember where I heard it, but it was a game changer. And the idea is dominate, don't compete. So I'm not sure, again, where I heard this. I did not make this up, but I love it. But here's the concept. Dominate, don't compete. And this sounds so just alpha patriarchal. This is not what I'm talking about. When you compete, you are more concerned with what other people are doing. When you dominate, you are focused on your race. You are focused on your lane. And inside that lane, you are doing everything that you can possibly do to play the game of your life. This is what we call dominate, not competing. And it's such a mindset shift, right? And in any moment, you can do that. What can I do today to stand out? What can I do today to add value to my customers and clients? What can I do today to create world-class marketing? What can I do today to recruit and retain a world-class team? What can I do today? Rather than what's going on in my market and how can I be better than them? And I think this mindset of dominating, not competing is a really, really powerful mindset. And this may trigger some of you. Some people don't like that word. That's totally good. I ask you to bear in mind the spirit of what I'm saying with this tip. All right, there you have it. 12 tips to help you compete in a saturated market. You can see that so many of these have to do not just with what you're doing, but with how you are thinking. Because what's so critical when it comes to helping you create a business that you love, that is a reflection of your values, that delivers immense value to your customers and clients and immense value to your bank account, It is really about developing you, the person who is leading that business. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this valuable, please go ahead and share it with somebody you think would benefit. I would really appreciate that. You can either tag them in the comments or you can simply share the live stream broadcast with them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you back here next week, same time, same place. Thanks again, everyone. Have an awesome day.